Hello everybody, it's Andreas again. So today I would like to share our wealth of experience of now 20 years, how to apply for a business visa in South Africa. So the business visa is not for your business travel, it's for the people who want to start a business here, who want to own a business, purchase a business and work in the business. Okay, so that's a very important part. We could also call it entrepreneurial visa, or if you want to call it investor visa, but we stick to the technical term business visa. So, and maybe I think it's important to understand that we have done a lot of them, and I do think it's really, really important to choose an immigration company which has vast experience of understanding the businesses and therefore compiling the applications correctly. So, what are the legal requirements in order to qualify for a business visa in South Africa? Well, there are basically two, really only. So if you start a new business, you're supposed to invest more than 5 million South African Rand into the book value of the business. And this money needs to come from overseas. So you can't approach a local bank for it. The second requirement is that 50% of your workforce needs to be local, meaning South African citizens or permanent residence holders. So if you as a foreigner work in it, so ideally you have another 2 employees who are local. These are the only 2 requirements. Sounds simple, isn't it? Yes. It sounds simple, but in practice, obviously, it's a bit more tricky than that. And I want to explain now in the next probably 3, 4, 5 minutes the requirements in depth and also a couple of red flags and practical challenges we face every day when we do these business visas. So the good news is that unlike Mauritius, for instance, or other African nations, basically you can start any business in any sector in South Africa. There are 3 sectors or 3 businesses are prohibited, but 20 years I've never found a client who wanted to start them, so I'm not going to mention them. So in principle, you're not limited or you're not prescribed a certain sector where you need to start your business in. Okay. The other important part is that there are 2 to 3 steps really depending on how much money you have. Okay, so in principle, the first step is always to apply for a recommendation letter from the Department of Trade and Industry. That's step number 1. Number 2 could be potentially to apply at the Department of Home Affairs, different department, for a waiver to waive the capital requirement of the 5 million investment or to lower it. Okay, and the third step would then be to apply for your business visa at a South African mission abroad. Okay, so these are the 3 steps in principle. I'm going to break them down now, and I want to start with the DTI. The DTI application is the cornerstone of the whole thing. That's the important step. If the DTI says yes, there's a very, very, very high chance that the business visa gets approved and even your waiver. Okay, so step number 2 and 3 will be positive. As a matter of fact, I never had after positive DTI recommendation, I never had the case that the waiver or the business visa was rejected. So the DTI is the crucial application. What does the DTI want? They want really to understand the planned business. And if you're buying an existing business, it's a bit easier because you have financial statements, you have customer reports, numbers, etc. So, but if you want to start a new business, they want to understand your business. So it needs to be at least a fairly short business plan, and we would incorporate this business plan in the application form of the DTI. And then you need to also show the availability of the funds. Okay, and as I said, in principle, you need to invest more than 5 million Rand into the book value of the business. By the way, internationally, that's quite a lot. Okay, Mauritius, $50,000, Kenya, $100,000. Now that's far away from 5 million Rand. So I think maybe the South African government should rethink this and lower this actually. But at the moment, the 5 million stand. And the crucial point is really the availability of the funds. So we have a lot of clients, private clients, who want to sell the house overseas first, and the transfer needs to go through, and they're going to ask me, can I use the binding legal sales agreement, because that's binding, as available funds? The answer is no, you can't. It needs to be available. That means it needs to lie on your bank account overseas. You can, of course, use a loan overseas because South Africa is interested in foreign direct investment. Okay, so they only interested is the 5 million coming from overseas, from outside South Africa into South Africa. This also answers the typical question, yeah, but can I take a local loan? No, you can't. It doesn't count as foreign direct investment. So ideally, it's really available in cash. Okay. In practice, there's obviously a couple of hurdles. Let's imagine you're a founder of a company in Europe. The company is 20 years old and it's doing very well. Now the company wants to invest in South Africa, not you as the founder in your private capacity, right? So here the good news is that the DTI is actually quite lenient towards this kind of scenario. If you can prove that you're the founder of the investing company or majority shareholder, or you have a controlling interest in it, then they will deem the investment by the company from overseas as your private investment in South Africa, and you as the individual can apply for a business visa in South Africa, because obviously your company don't need a business visa in South Africa. You need, because you're the foreigner living here. So that's an important one. We struggle sometimes with startups. So typically a founder has a great idea, they put in sweat equity, but then they're financed by third parties, VCs, etc., etc. That's a problem at the moment. Still with the DTI, we're in constant negotiations there or discussions. I cannot speak badly about the DTI at all. They're always open for arguments. They stand to certain positions which we need to accept. But they are mostly based on reason and a certain portion of goodwill. So the DTI is interested in actually you investing in South Africa, and I like this general positive attitude. But there is a problem potentially at third-party funding for the main applicant. Okay. Now the availability of the funds must be confirmed by a South African chartered accountant, not by a German Wirtschaftsprüfer, no, by a South African chartered accountant. And we work with one or two together who have vast experience, and we really strongly recommend that you use our chartered accountant, because in practice we have a lot of clients who want to use their own chartered accountant and then they do something wrong and we have problems afterwards. So that's the important step. Now the chartered accountant certificate and a couple of other documents will be sent to the DTI. They take about 2 months, sometimes faster, sometimes 2 months, to then hopefully approve the application, issue the recommendation letter. And with that recommendation letter, you can then move on to step 2. If you have invested more than 5 million rand into the book value of the business, there is no step 2. You don't need to waive or lower the capital requirement. But if you invest less, then you need to apply at the Department of Home Affairs. And that can be through the South African Mission or through a local VFS office here in South Africa for a reduction of the 5 million. Okay. That waiver application can take up to 6 months. Yes, you heard right. You want to invest in South Africa and the DTI takes 2 months and the waiver takes 6 months? Yes. We're very welcoming to practically to foreign investors and make it really difficult. Apparently everybody has time to wait for 12 months to invest in South Africa. So that's a problem. Okay, I hope it's going to be reduced at some stage. Maybe somebody is listening to these videos and puts this forward. But 6 months is too long for waiver. And then the last step is really to apply for the business visa itself. You will need lots of private documents similar to all the other immigration permits or visas into South Africa. And then you submit that at the South African Mission in your country of residence or passport. And there the processing times vary between 2 and 8 weeks. Okay. So as I said, in total, you can look at 9 months, 10 months. So that's too long, it's just way too long, especially if you need this waiver. So ideally, we would like to circumvent the waiver. The other important questions I always get asked is, but what if I now say in the business plan, I want to do this and this and that, and I can't stick to it. Or I wanted to invest 6 million, but the business already was flying after 3 million investment. What about my other 3 million, right? So do I need to actually deliver on the promise I made in the DTI application? And here my answer is that, for the first 3 years you get the business visa issued for, it doesn't really matter. Not really. You need to create the employment, that's for sure. But when you want to apply for permanent residence, or for an extension of the business visa, you again need the recommendation letter from the DTI, and then the DTI will actually check what have you done. Now, if there were good reasons why the business did so much better, you didn't need all the investment, then you can argue this. You can show it in the numbers, there's financial statements, and then they're open to the argument. But obviously, if you say you're going to invest 10 million in the tourism sector and you're going to invest 1 million into a consulting business, that's not going to fly for renewal. Okay, so it's common sense. Other countries in the world are very, very similar. You can't completely change your intentions, but be aware that obviously the enforcement of your plan kind of plays a role when you want to renew or extend or apply for permanent residence. Okay, but overall, it's a good concept. It takes a little bit too long at the moment, but yeah, this is a viable route, and we would be glad and happy to help. I have a team of 2 experts really doing this a lot, really a lot. Some of them are over 10 years. So we know what we're doing, and please reach out to us. Thank you very much.